Among other things, she pioneered the use of visitor surveys in the form of exit polls. As the museum's editor-publisher, I arranged for the book to be designed by Adrian Wilson, a graphic genius, and published by New York Graphic Society. It sold, believe it or not, over 700,000 copies. They'd never seen anything like it. The art world had never seen anything like it. In the following years, Wyeth received many honors. Wyeth shows were seen in many major museums around the world, including Japan, China, and the National Gallery of Art in Washington. Let's take a look at some of the installation shots of Wanda's show in San Francisco, which was designed in collaboration with Tom Garver. She even managed to bring the nudes to San Francisco. The inspiration for the very next major Wyeth show in Washington, one that opens in a few months, this May, was the donation to the National Collection of Wind from the Sea, this painting, which I think is one of his greatest masterpieces, and the very painting that Wanda chose for the cover of her pioneering book 40 years ago. A great exhibition curator needs not only to be brilliant, she or he also needs an eye. Wanda Corn has an extraordinary eye for quality. There always will be a debate, of course, as to whether Wyeth is underrated or overrated, but the same, of course, is true of Pollock and Warhol and Picasso and many others. But nevertheless, thanks in part to Wanda's mind and eye, Wyeth came to be regarded as a national treasure. Let's move on to the Rockefeller show. To organize a show that changes the perception of an artist is one thing. To organize a show that changes the perception of an entire museum is another thing. Some background. When I was asked to come to San Francisco in 1970 to be the chief curator of the city museums, the national standing of these two museums was, how shall I say, modest. One can never be exact in such matters, but I've heard that the Young Museum would have had a rank of maybe about 25th, and the Legion of Honor Museum perhaps 50th. So the question for us was, how can a good museum become a great museum? The first thing we did was merge the two city museums that had been competing for scarce resources. We made it one board and one staff with one collection and one exhibition program. The combined name was the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco, which is still the name. With merged resources, we were able to bring wonderful shows to San Francisco. Van Gogh, Norton Simon's French masterpieces, Dead Sea Scrolls, and King Tut. But what about the collection? Wanda did not know it at the time because the director and I had been sworn to secrecy. But her work on the Rockefeller exhibition would play a very important role in the growth of the San Francisco collection. With merged acquisition funds, we were able to buy wonderful paintings in the early 70s. The first masterpiece we were able to acquire in 1970 was Church's Rainy Season in the Tropics of 1866. I'm sure most of you know this painting. It's very large and extraordinarily beautiful, and is still the most visited painting in the DeYoung Museum today. John D. Rockefeller III, whom we call JDR, was quite surprised that a small museum like ours had paid a world record price for this painting. He called to ask, why had we done that? With the director away, the call came to me. He asked, quote, "Does this mean your museum is seriously interested in American art?" Unquote. "Yes, Mr. Rockefeller. In fact, we are now merging the American collections of the DeYoung and the Legion, and I am writing a book on American painting, illustrated with our own merged collection. Together, we have the finest American collection in the West, colonial to modern." And then He asked this profound question, quote, "Would your museum be interested in having my collection?" Unquote. Yes, Mr. Rockefeller, we would indeed. From that point on, JDR swore the director and myself to absolute secrecy. We could not even tell the chairman of the board. Behind closed doors in San Francisco and New York, we negotiated for several years, aware that we were in competition with larger museums on the East Coast. Often with us was E.P. Richardson, JDR's curatorial consultant. During a very special lunch at the Rockefeller Center in 1974, I proposed that the DeYoung Museum be the place where his collection would be shown to the public for the first time in 1976 on the occasion of our bicentennial. I would curate the exhibition, and I proposed that Richardson write a catalog that I would edit. These proposals were warmly received by everyone at the table, so it looked like the great American art collection was within our grasp. As our planning continued, there was a change in my career path. I was recruited by the National Endowment for the Humanities to head a think tank for cultural affairs. There was very little planning going on in those days, so billions of dollars were being wasted. Planning would make a big difference, and I wanted to be part of that difference. I would stay at the museum long enough to edit the catalog, but we needed a curator for the exhibition. I proposed Wanda. The director agreed. What she did as a curator was another work of genius. The core exhibition was predictably thoughtful and elegant. Wanda had learned the magic of lighting, the musicality of spatial proportions, and the dramatic potential of juxtapositions. The Rockefeller collection was at that time the most important of its kind ever assembled in the world as a private collection. To see the collection all at once was a powerful vision of the whole range of pre-modern American art at its very best. Let me just show you some examples that range from colonial on up through industrial. A rich survey of 3 centuries of American art. What particularly impressed Mr. and Mrs. Rockefeller was what Wanda did with the exhibition's educational programs. Unlike many billionaires, JDR was a truly democratic spirit with a very deep interest in education. And Wanda developed programs the likes of which the Rockefellers had never seen. Again, Wanda created her signature wall labels that brought the paintings into focus and explanatory side galleries that gave the works context. She also invited all the universities in Northern California to design special courses and field trips. And remember, this was a time when very few universities in America offered courses in American art. So this was radical. For adults, Wanda abandoned the conventional lecture series and did something very fresh. She gathered teams of professors and performers to create what she called an American Sampler, which was a set of mixed media programs that brought together music, dance, theater, literature, art, and history. The auditorium filled twice a week with programs that ranged from songs being sung of the American West to minstrels dancing in the aisles. In short, she brought the paintings to life in a richly engaging way. Both programs were big hits in the academic world and among the visiting public. The Rockefellers were very impressed. This is how they wanted their collection to be loved and used in richly imaginative ways. On one beautiful day in January of 1978, Mr. Rockefeller announced at a press conference in San Francisco that his collection would be coming to live in San Francisco. Of course, we cannot give Wanda all the credit for that monumental decision. The director, Ian White, and I had been, as you know, negotiating this deal for several years. However, Wanda's exhibition was a beautiful finale to half a decade of negotiations. This historic donation would not have happened without her. With the arrival of the Rockefeller Collection in 1979, FAMCEF, the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco, started to be widely regarded as a first-class museum. By the end of its first decade in 1979, the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco was being ranked among the top 10 in the nation. On behalf of the people of the San Francisco Bay Area, now and in the future, thank you, Wanda, for your pioneering years at the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco. You have helped to enrich the lives of generations.